anyway, I went back to pick it up, and I bumped into Frank there.
Yeah.
And Frank had just been hired as the director of this new center.
Gotcha.
And Frank told me.
You and Frank knew each other? Or?
Yeah. Frank and I knew each other because I was. He was a person. I was part of an organization called Puerto Rican Students Union that originally was part of the Young Lords, and then about 3 months after I was on that part of PRSU, they sort of became autonomous from the Young Lords. But they had chapters organized in different college campuses around the city. And there was one at Columbia University where I was going for my doctorate in sociology. And there was a group of people there who were trying to see if we get Columbia to create a Latino institute.
Yeah.
And so Angelo Falcon he was an undergrad. He was there. Camilo Carrillo, the doctor, a bunch of us, Carlos Sanabria. Anyway, and for this institute, they got a board together.
Gotcha.
And Frank was one of the people. I had no connection to any of these people. I didn't know, but Evelina Antonetti, Frank Bonilla, Dr. Trilla, a bunch of them that they knew. Angelo and others knew about these people and invited them, and they came, and we had several meetings with them trying to get Columbia University to start this Latino Institute. And well, I won't go into that. That's another history. But that's how I knew Frank. So when I bumped into Frank, Frank told me, Pedro, how are you doing it? And I had sort of dropped out of the student movement, activism and stuff through preparation, because I was studying for my PhD oral exams. And I had taken them, and then once I took those and passed them, I got the position at Manhattan Community College, so I left that summer. And anyway, I came back, and Frank told me that there was this institute that was being started. He was hired as the director. He left Stanford, full tenured position and everything, to come and become director of the Centro. And at that time, he was on 80th Street because there was no office yet.
Right.
He was actually had a desk out in the hallway with a phone. That's where he was working from at the moment. It was like improvised, Anyway, so he asked me if I would come, and so I went through the process. I got hired, but I couldn't actually start working. I would go on my spare time to the center and work as a volunteer, really, because I couldn't really start working until May or June because I had to finish at Manhattan Community College. I already started the second semester, and I had to let them know so it would be effective after that semester.
Right.
And so anyway, that got me into the Centro, which then got me into East Harlem. They hired me to do research on language in the Puerto Rican community. And at that time, early 70s, the first bilingual programs in the city were being created. The one in the Bronx, that La Fontaine started, and then there was one here in East Harlem. They were beginning Title VII proposals, and there were bilingual programs initiating, and the Bronx also. Up there, Tony Alvarado was the director of it. Right. I forgot the name of the school now, but anyway, so there was questions about what should they be doing, what kind of Spanish should they be teaching, and what kind of community are we anyway, are we bilingual or what, all these kinds of questions were and so the language policy task force of the Centro, which Frank wanted me come to the Centro to head, because my dissertation, my work was on language, but not a linguistic approach, but a sociological approach to language use and language policy. But the Centro had a language policy task force. The Centro, when it started from the proposal, talked about 5 areas of research. They called them task forces, and language policy, culture, history, criminal justice, and higher education. Those were the 5 task forces. So I was invited to come and take charge of the language policy one. I was a sort of a little bit of an anomaly because wasn't the original plan of the Centro was to get a faculty member to teach, to head each task force, and then a research assistant who would work with them, and then a community group, a community advisory committee for each task force. And I was sort of like both a student because I was still working,
Right.
but still more at a faculty level. So I was
you were
a
doing
little bit
faculty and research?
yes, I was
Okay.
sort of an anomaly in that sense, and heading this. But we created a task force, a community group of people who were interested in these issues from the Puerto Rican community around the issue of bilingualism and the nature of our bilingualism and what should a bilingual program attempt to do in terms of maintenance, transition, what kind of Spanish, and then questions about language policy.
Yeah.
What kind of a language policy we should advocate for. Now, first working paper that we put out was a language policy statement for the Puerto Rican community. That's what we developed through work with this community group, etc. Anyway, to make a long story short, many members of that community group were from East Harlem. And they one day came and proposed to us, why don't you guys study these issues live, like right where it's happening and how it's actually being lived. And come and we propose you come to a barrio and we'll work with you, we'll help you set it up and get it going, all that. And that's what we did. To make a long story short, we started a research project that had an ethnographic component, attitudinal component, and a social-linguistic component. The social-linguistic part to begin analyzing aspects of our use of Spanish, the dialect, characteristics of our particular dialect, the Spanish Puerto Rican. And then, and in particular, as we started doing field work and interviewing and then recording people, etc., in the neighborhood, in the native activity, in their actual daily activities, the issue came up because we heard it and saw it so much. Code switching, the use of two languages at the same time. What is that? Is that a Creole? Is that a language, or is that So anyway, this is sort of getting away from the point you're at,
okay.
But that's how I started getting involved, and I got to know a lot of people in the community, particularly who were involved in bilingual education and struggling to come up with answers to these questions and trying to influence bilingual education and particularly get it away from the transitional model, which was what the Aspida Consent Decree won in court. And when the Aspida Consent Decree was coming down, Aspida came to the Centro and Frank and said, we need you guys to help us figure out what to do.